At the banquet, I defied him for the first time. Today, between me and her, only one can stay. He gave me a dismissive glance carelessly. Eat if you want, or get the hell out. Looking at him, I suddenly felt utterly exhausted. This position of Mrs. Thorne, I don't want it anymore. On the night of the Thorne family's annual charity gala, Manhattan's night sky was torn apart by hundreds of spotlights, and my fiancé Kevin, in front of all of New York's elite, brought that canary. He kept on the side right to my face. Elegant jazz had been flowing through the ballroom. But the moment that woman in the white lace gown walked in on Kevin's arm, the air seemed to freeze instantly. The guests around me in their couture gowns turned their gazes toward me like searchlights in unison, wearing that distinctly Upper East Side expression, a mix of pity and schadenfreude. Kevin's cousin Edward, a trust fund playboy who squandered his days away, sauntered over swirling his champagne, and said in that nauseating mocking tone, "Heather, looks like my cousin found you some company tonight. That girl looks rather familiar, doesn't she? I wonder, as the future Mrs. Thorne, would you mind an extra pair of chopsticks at home?" I watched the perfect couple not far away without showing any emotion. The girl was very young, with a head of thick black curly hair and a tear mole at the corner of her eye. That was Selena Vance's signature, Kevin's dead first love, the famous genius artist, and the sword of Damocles that had hung over my head for a full 10 years. The girl timidly leaned against Kevin's expensive suit fabric, her eyes looking exactly like a startled fawn. Kevin was lowering his head talking to her, that tender expression. I once had it too, or rather, I thought I had. Kevin seemed to notice the commotion over here, and he walked over with the girl. His expression was so brazen it bordered on arrogance, as if he wasn't humiliating his own fiancée, but showing off a newly purchased piece of furniture to the butler. "Heather, this is Ivy." Kevin's voice was deep and magnetic, carrying an unquestionable sense of control. "She is just starting out in Hollywood, ran into some trouble. Tonight, I am just bringing her to see the world. You've always been generous. You won't make a fuss over such trivial matters, right?" I looked into his eyes, those deep blue eyes filled with certainty. He was certain I couldn't leave him. Certain I was that pitiful wretch the late matriarch of the Thorne family had picked up from the orphanage. Certain that I, a bird with clipped wings, had nowhere to go but this cage forged of gold. "Kevin," I spoke up, my voice even calmer than I had imagined. "Are you serious?" Kevin furrowed his brows slightly, seemingly displeased by my retort. He casually adjusted his cufflinks, that lofty attitude as always. "Stop making a fuss, Heather. Ivy is just here to have a meal and meet a few producers. You know, the position of Mrs. Thorne will always be yours. As long as you behave, even if it is just an empty title, it is enough for you to walk sideways in New York." The girl named Ivy chimed in at just the right moment, her voice trembling, carrying a carefully rehearsed, pitiful demeanor. "Miss Thorne, I begged Mr. Kevin to bring me here. I'll leave right now." She was about to turn around as she spoke, but was pulled back by Kevin. He didn't even glance at me, but gently shielded the girl's shoulders. "Enough. Stop acting like a child throwing a tantrum. Heather, your temper has been getting worse lately. Stay if you want to stay. If not, then go back to the manor. Don't embarrass yourself here." "Embarrass myself. It is like I spent 10 years of my youth, patience, and love watering a stone, and in the end, the stone not only didn't bloom but also smashed down on my foot." Looking at Ivy's face that looked so much like Selena's, I suddenly felt an unprecedented wave of nausea and exhaustion. Not because of jealousy, but because of weariness. I was tired of imitating a dead person, tired of dressing according to Kevin's preferences, tired of playing a perfect, soulless doll in this circle reeking of old aristocratic decay. I looked down at the ring finger of my left hand. There sat a huge sapphire ring, an engagement heirloom passed down through 3 generations of the Thorne family. The old madam had put it on my finger before she passed, telling me it was both a shackle and a safeguard. But this ring was too heavy, so heavy that I couldn't pick up a paintbrush. So heavy that I couldn't breathe. I reached out with my right hand and gripped the ring band. Kevin was chatting and laughing with Edward when he caught my movement from the corner of his eye and raised his eyebrow impatiently. "What are you doing, Kevin?" I called his name for the first time without any hint of trying to please. "This dinner, either I stay or she does." Kevin let out a scornful laugh, as if he'd heard the funniest joke in the world. "Heather, know your place. Without me, without the Thorne family's support, you couldn't even afford a basement apartment in Manhattan. Don't try to threaten me with this stupid stunt. You know what I hate the most. Yeah, I am an orphan. I am a dog raised by the Thorne family." I laughed self-deprecatingly, my fingers pressing hard as I removed that sapphire ring symbolizing status and position. The metal scraped against my skin, bringing a sting of pain, yet accompanied by a lightness like my soul was leaving my body. But starting today, I quit. Amid everyone's gasps, I raised that priceless ring into the air, then let go. A crisp clink rang out. The ring fell into a glass at the top of a perfectly stacked champagne tower nearby. The splash of liquid broke the dead silence, followed by a chain reaction of glasses toppling, colliding, and shattering. Crystal-clear champagne tower collapsed before me. The wine flowing across the floor like a golden waterfall, glass shards refracting blinding light under the spotlights. The girl named Ivy screamed and hid in Kevin's arms, while Kevin's face instantly turned ashen. "Heather, are you crazy?" he roared. I didn't answer, just gave him one last deep look. In that gaze, there was no love, no hate, only a desolation of having seen through to the ending. "Kevin, you are right. Mrs. Thorne's position is worth a lot." I turned around, lifting my expensive dress hem, my heels clicking crisply against the marble floor. "But I don't want it anymore. Save it for those replicas of yours." "If you dare walk out that door today," Kevin's icy voice rang out behind me, carrying the sharp edge of a threat, "don't ever think about coming back. I'll cut off all your cards, block every escape route you have. You'll come crawling back to beg me." My footsteps faltered for a moment, Ansei. Those words were my nightmare, but now they sounded like some kind of trumpet of liberation. I didn't look back, didn't even pause, pushed open that heavy gilded door, and walked into the biting cold wind of New York's late autumn. After escaping the banquet hall, I didn't burst into tears like Kevin had predicted, nor was I at a loss. On the contrary, my mind was clearer than ever. I took a cab back to Thorne Manor, the place where I'd lived for 12 years, the place that was as cold as a museum, yet never felt like home. The butler seemed surprised to see me return alone, but I paid him no mind, rushing straight up to the second floor, back to the room that belonged to me, or rather the dressing room that belonged to the role of fiancée. I pulled out a black travel bag and started packing. The closet was filled with clothes Kevin had picked out for me: silk dresses, cashmere coats, vintage louses. Every piece was expensive. Every piece was in the style Selena had loved when she was alive. I pushed them aside one by one and finally found a few simple t-shirts and jeans tucked in the corner. I'd bought those back when I was still at art school, but later Kevin said these clothes were not presentable enough and forbade me from wearing them. I changed into the jeans I hadn't worn in ages. The feeling of rough fabric against my skin made me feel real. I only took my ID, a few sketchbooks, an old set of painting supplies I'd hidden under the bed, and a little bit of savings I'd set aside myself. As for the jewelry, designer bags, and expensive gifts Kevin had given me, I left them all behind. Before leaving, I passed by the door at the end of the hallway. It was Selena's studio when she was alive, and also the forbidden zone of this house. Kevin would spend a few days there every month, mourning his beloved. He once flew into a rage just because I accidentally touched the door handle, saying I wasn't worthy of touching art. I gave that tightly closed door a cold glance. To hell with his art, to hell with his Selena. When I walked out of the estate gates, I tossed the access card into the fountain by the entrance. The water splashed up, as if bidding me farewell. I wandered aimlessly around Manhattan and somehow ended up walking into an underground jazz bar in Brooklyn. The lighting was dim, the air thick with the smell of whiskey and old leather, completely different from the perfume of the Upper East Side. I sat in the corner of the bar and ordered the strongest tequila they had. "Hey, crying over there comes with a fine," a cheerful female voice rang out beside my ear. I looked up and through my blurry vision saw a Latina girl with dreadlocks, wearing a leather jacket. She was sitting next to me, fiddling with an old-looking Leica camera. Her smile as bright as the midday sun. "I wasn't crying," I said stubbornly, even though my voice was already hoarse. "All right, not crying." The girl shrugged and pushed a napkin toward me. "I am Max, a wandering photographer. You look like you just escaped from the Titanic." Her description made me laugh a little, though that smile probably looked worse than crying. "I am Heather. Heather, nice name." Max looked over my jeans and the shabby travel bag in my hand. "Looks like you are going through some kind of life turning point. Running away from home? Dumped some douchebag. Pretty much." I tilted my head back and down the drink in my glass, the spicy liquid burning my throat. I just suddenly realized that my entire past life was a joke. "Who isn't?" Max laughed and clinked glasses with me. "I stole my dad's pickup truck and ran away just to avoid inheriting the family cornfield. Now I've converted that truck into an RV, and I am planning to drive it all the way down Route 66, all the way to California. So you want to hitch a ride?" She was probably just saying it casually, joking around with the down and out drunk, but looking into her eyes full of wildness and freedom. I nodded as if possessed. Okay. Max was stunned for a second, then let out a whistle. Cool, I like your style, but girl, before you get in the car, you gotta deal with that burden on your head first. She pointed at my carefully maintained, waist-length wavy curls. Kevin loved this long hair the most. Because Selena also had hair like this, he always liked to stroke my hair while looking at someone else through me. Riding on the liquid courage, I asked the bartender for a pair of scissors, standing in front of the graffiti-covered mirror in the restroom. I looked at the pale-faced, hollow-eyed woman in the mirror. Snip. The first cut, and the long hair fell to the ground. Snip, snip, like a madwoman. I haphazardly hacked away at those threads that had entangled me for 10 years. Strands of hair fell in large clumps onto the dirty floor tiles, and along with the disappearing long hair, so did that meek, husband-worshipping Heather. When I walked out of the bathroom again, I had transformed into a strange woman with ear-length short hair. The ends were uneven, yet looked sharp and vivid. Max looked at me, the admiration in his eyes completely unconcealed. Wow, now this is the look of someone about to do big things. Let's go. My car's right outside. At 3 in the morning, I got into Max's modified RV covered in colorful graffiti. The interior was packed with photography equipment, canned food, and old maps, cramped yet warm. The car started, the engine letting out a somewhat noisy roar. I took out my phone. The screen showed over a dozen missed calls, all from the butler. Kevin probably hadn't noticed I was gone yet, or even if he had, he was certain I was just sulking in some corner somewhere, waiting for him to graciously offer me a way out. I pulled out the SIM card and rolled down the window. The night wind howled in, messing up my freshly cut short hair. I swung my arm hard, and the tiny chip traced an arc through the air, disappearing into the rolling traffic beneath the Brooklyn Bridge. Kevin, Thorne Manor, goodbye. Ready? Max stepped on the gas, raising an eyebrow at me through the rearview mirror. We're eloping with freedom. Drive. I looked at the pitch-black yet infinitely stretching road ahead, feeling my heart pounding violently in my chest for the first time. That was the feeling of being alive. The first week after leaving New York, I went through a baptism called desensitization. Max was a total wild traveler. There was no such thing as comfort zone in her dictionary. We slept in Walmart parking lots, brushed our teeth in gas station restrooms, and ate the cheapest burgers and tacos. For the former Miss Thorne, who used to be picky about even the temperature of her drinking water, this kind of life was absolute hell. But I felt freer than ever before. Nobody cared what I wore. Nobody complained if I made noise while eating. Nobody watched my every micro-expression to see if it met etiquette standards. I didn't have to worry about embarrassing the Thorne family because here I was just Heather, a drifter with short hair wearing dusty jeans. Our car headed west, through the forests of Pennsylvania, across the plains of Ohio, and finally into the vast Midwest. That evening, we arrived at Zion National Park in Utah. Max parked the car at a campsite overlooking the canyon and excitedly pointed at a distant red rock peak that looked like it had been carved by knives and axes, saying, "Tomorrow we're climbing that Angel's Landing." I looked up at that almost vertical cliff and my calves started trembling. That so-called hiking trail only had a chain for a handrail, with bottomless drops on both sides. I can't do it. I instinctively shrank back. I have a fear of heights. Actually, I didn't used to have acrophobia. It is just that ever since I moved into Thorne Manor, I became more and more timid, more and more afraid of losing control. Kevin always said, "Heather, it is dangerous outside. Just stay home." Over time, I really thought I would die without him. Max set up the campfire while looking at me with that all-seeing gaze. Fear is just a cage you built for yourself. Heather, you escaped from New York, a place that eats people alive and spits out their bones, and you were scared of a few rocks that night. I lay in my sleeping bag, tossing and turning, unable to sleep. The skylight on the car roof let in a sky full of stars, so dazzling it made me want to cry. I thought of that painting I had hidden under the bed at the manor, depicting the starry sky I imagined, but I had never seen such a beautiful sight with my own eyes. At 4 in the morning the next day, Max dragged me out of my sleeping bag. The climb was even harder than I had imagined. The cold wind cut across my face like knives. My hands gripped the icy chains tightly, and I had to take several deep breaths with every step. Just on that ridge path near the summit, I suddenly slipped, and half my body was dangling in midair. Fear instantly engulfed me like a tidal wave in that moment. I felt like I was back in that cold orphanage from my childhood, back to the suffocating feeling of being pushed into the pool, back to Kevin's cold, indifferent eyes. I can't do it. I want to go back. I gripped the chain for dear life, tears bursting from my eyes, my whole body trembling. "Don't look down," Max shouted from ahead, her voice sounding somewhat broken in the wind, yet unusually firm. "Heather, look at me. Don't look at your feet. Look ahead." I struggled to lift my head and saw Max reaching her hand out to me. As dawn faintly broke, her silhouette appeared blurry yet sacred in the golden halo. "Grab my hand, then stand up," she said. "You can do it. You are not that loser who clings to others. You are Heather. You are Heather." Those words struck through my fear like a bolt of lightning. I clenched my teeth, and with Max's strength, pulled myself back on track bit by bit. The moment we finally climbed to the summit, the sun was just leaping over the horizon. In that instant, the whole world was set ablaze. The once gray canyon was instantly dyed in intense crimson and gold, the layered rocky peaks like burning flames, stretching all the way to the edge of sight. This magnificence, this grandeur, this vitality that seemed to suck one's very soul in, left me completely speechless. I stood at the edge of the cliff, gasping for breath, tears flowing down uncontrollably. This time it wasn't from fear, but from being moved. I pulled out the sketchbook and charcoal pencil I always carried from my bag and began to draw with trembling hands. Lines danced across the paper, capturing the shifting play of light and shadow. In this moment, I didn't need to imitate anyone, didn't need to please anyone. I was just myself, a tiny human awed by nature. Max didn't disturb me. She just quietly raised her camera and pressed the shutter. After coming down the mountain, we rested at the campsite. Max handed me her laptop. "Check this out." On the screen was a video she had just finished editing. It opened with my resolute silhouette cutting my hair in New York, interspersed with our laughter on the road, and the climax was a profile shot of me painting facing the impression, sunrise on the mountaintop with stirring and hopeful music. "I posted it on TikTok, and the response has been pretty good," Max said with a smile. I glanced at the stats and was surprised to find the video already had hundreds of thousands of views. The comments were all asking, "Who is this girl painting? Her eyes are so powerful. This is your rebirth, Heather." Max patted my shoulder. "Welcome to the real world after leaving Utah." We headed south all the way and arrived at Santa Fe, New Mexico. This place is known as an artist's paradise. The adobe buildings radiate warm ochre tones under the desert sun. The air is filled with the scent of sage and chili peppers, and artists with their stalls can be seen everywhere on the streets. Max encouraged me to give it a try. "Your paintings have such spirit to them. Why not try selling them?" I hesitated a bit. At the Thorn Manor, my paintings had never been acknowledged. Kevin always said, "Your paintings don't have that intensity Selena has. They're too mediocre." But under Max's persistent coaxing, I still rented a small booth at the weekend art market. I displayed the sketches I'd done on the road these past few days, along with that impression, sunrise oil painting I painted at Zion National Park. At first, no one showed any interest, and I felt a bit dejected, even starting to wonder if I really had no talent. Until noon, an elderly gentleman wearing a Panama straw hat and a linen suit stopped in front of my booth. He gazed at that impression, sunrise, for a long time, his eyes focused. "What is this painting called?" he asked. I was stunned for a moment, remembering how I felt standing on that mountaintop that day, and blurted out, "Light through the cracks." The elderly gentleman nodded, a hint of an appreciative smile appearing at the corner of his lips. "The handling of light and shadow is very bold. Although the brushstrokes are still a bit rough, the emotion is very rich. I can feel that vitality of breaking free from constraints in the painting. This is exactly what many academic painters nowadays are lacking." He pulled out a check, filled in a number, and handed it to me. "I'll take it." I looked at the number on the check, $2,000 for the former Thorn fiancé. This might just be the price of a pair of shoes, but for Heather now, this was the highest affirmation of my worth. "Thank you." I was so excited I was a bit incoherent. "Keep drawing, child." The old gentleman patted my shoulder. "You have talent." That night, Max and I took the money we'd earned and went for the most authentic New Mexican food. We drank margaritas, chatted about our future plans, and laughed so hard we nearly fell over. Just as we walked out of the restaurant with a nice buzz, a black Lincoln sedan pulled up in front of us without any warning. The car window slowly rolled down, revealing the face I least wanted to see at that moment. Kevin Thorn. He wore an impeccably tailored handmade suit, maintaining that suffocating aristocratic air even on this dusty small-town street. But his complexion wasn't great. There were faint dark circles under his eyes, clearly indicating things hadn't been going smoothly for him lately. "Heather," he called my name, his voice suppressing rage. "Had enough fun?" The smile on my face vanished instantly, my body instinctively tensing up. Max immediately stepped in front of me like a mother lion protecting her cub. "Hey, who are you? Get out of the way." Kevin didn't even spare Max a glance, just stared at me fixedly, his gaze landing on my uneven short hair, his brow furrowing deeply. "What happened to your hair? Who gave you permission to cut it?" "I cut it because I wanted to. It is my hair." I took a deep breath, stepped out from behind Max, and looked him straight in the eyes. "Kevin, what are you doing here? What, you thought I couldn't find you just because you tossed the SIM card?" Kevin sneered, opening the car door and stepping out. "Heather, you are too naive. If I want to, I can dig you out, even if I have to search all of America." He extended his hand toward me, his tone returning to that usual condescension. "Get in the car. This time I'll just assume you came out to clear your head. Come back with me, and I can let bygones be bygones." Let bygones be bygones. What an arrogant phrase, as if I was the one who did something wrong, and he was magnanimously forgiving me. "I am not going back." I stepped back, refusing his touch. "I told you, I quit." Kevin's hand froze midair, his face terrifyingly dark. "Don't make me get rough, Heather. Look at yourself right now, hanging out with these shady people, selling those crappy paintings for a few $100 on the street. Is this what you call freedom? You are disgracing the Thorne family. This is the life I want." I suddenly exploded. Years of suppressed emotions erupting like a volcano. "I feel more human now than I ever did in that gilded cage of yours. People appreciate my paintings. My friends respect me. Every single penny I have is earned by myself. Kevin, you don't understand what life is at all. All you understand is control." Passers-by around us started gathering to watch, some even pulling out their phones to record. Kevin obviously didn't expect me to talk back to him in public, and even more couldn't stand the embarrassment of being watched by a crowd like this. For someone like him, keeping up appearances mattered most. "Very good." He withdrew his hand, straightened his collar, his gaze turning icy cold. "Since you are so eager to experience this kind of bottom-feeder life, I'll grant your wish. I'll freeze all the accounts under your name, including that education fund the old madam left you. Let's see how long you can keep up this tough act." "Do whatever you want," I said coldly. "I am no longer part of the Thorne family. I never wanted that money anyway. You'll regret this." Kevin gave me a long, deep look, then turned and got into the car. "When you come crying and begging me, it won't be this easy." The black sedan sped off, leaving behind a cloud of exhaust. I stood there, my body still trembling slightly. But in my heart there was a cathartic relief, like rotten flesh had finally been cut away completely. "You okay?" Max looked at me with some concern. I turned around and gave her a bright smile, even though my eyes were still a bit red. "I am fine. Come on, let's go buy new art supplies. I am going to paint more and better paintings. And show him who is really going to regret this." Kevin was true to his word. The next day, when I tried to pay for gas with my credit card, it showed transaction declined. Even the education fund card that the old madam had left me, the one that was nominally mine, had been frozen. I stood under the blazing sun at the gas station, looking at the stack of useless plastic cards in my hand, and actually burst out laughing. This is Kevin's tactic, always using financial sanctions to force me into submission. If it were before, I probably would have broken down crying, then obediently called back to apologize. But now, I just find him pathetic. He thinks as long as he cuts off my money supply, I'll suffocate and die like a fish out of water. But what he doesn't know is that I've already learned to breathe air. Looks like we need to find a different way to live. Max looked at the empty fuel gauge, not only didn't panic, but even whistled. "Next stop is Las Vegas, Heather. Do you know what else you can do in a place like that besides gambling?" "What? Street performing." When we arrived in Las Vegas, we happened to catch a big outdoor carnival. Neon lights covered the entire boulevard like flowing lava, and the air was filled with the smell of burning money. Max and I divided up the work. She played guitar and sang in the square, and that slightly husky, smoky voice of hers quickly attracted a circle of tourists. As for me, I set up my drawing board and sketched portraits for people. $20 apiece, no charge if you are not satisfied," I shouted loudly. This kind of putting myself out there was something I wouldn't have even dared to think about before, but now, for the sake of my next meal and gas money, I went all in. My drawing skills became increasingly refined through all the practice. I was no longer bound by academic rules, but instead tried to capture each person's momentary expression, the madness in gamblers' eyes, the fatigue on tourists' faces, the sweetness between couples. That night, we made a full $500. Just as we were packing up and getting ready to leave, a middle-aged man in a flashy floral shirt walked over, followed by 2 bodyguards. "Miss, nice paintings." The man blew out a cigar smoke ring, his eyes shamelessly roaming over me. "You look a bit familiar. Aren't you that runaway bride who went viral on TikTok? Max and I exchanged a glance, my heart skipping a beat. I didn't expect our video had gone this viral. I just look like her. I lowered my head to pack up my art supplies, wanting to leave as soon as possible. Don't rush off. The man reached out to block me. I happen to need someone to paint murals for my new casino. Your style's pretty wild. Name your price. I looked at him warily. Sorry, we have other plans. $10,000. The man held up one finger. As long as you are willing to have a drink with me, the job is yours. This blatant innuendo made me feel sick. I was about to refuse when a familiar figure suddenly rushed out from the crowd. Get your filthy hands off her. It was Kevin. He was actually still following me. Or rather, it wasn't surprising that he had business in Las Vegas. Kevin shoved the floral shirt guy aside and shielded me behind him. In that moment, I felt a bit dazed. This seemed to be the first time he had stepped up purely out of protectiveness, without any interests at stake. Who the hell are you? The man in the floral shirt stumbled from the push, waving his hand in angry embarrassment for the bodyguards to step in. Kevin shot him a cold glance, his innate aura of superiority fully unleashed. I am Kevin Thorne. If you don't want your rundown casino shut down for tax issues tomorrow, you'd better scram now. Thorne, the man's face changed instantly. In this circle, no one didn't know the weight of the Thorne family. He muttered a few curses and slunk away with his people. Kevin turned around, looking at the art supplies in my hands and the pocket stuffed with loose change, his expression complicated. This is your new life. He pointed at those crumpled bills, his tone carrying a hint of frustrated disappointment. Getting harassed on the street by this kind of trash for a few $100? Heather, where is your self-respect? My self-respect is right here. I patted the pocket with the money, looking at him calmly. This money was earned with my own 2 hands, every cent of it clean. As for you, Kevin, besides using your family name to pressure people, what else can you do? Kevin was left speechless by my retort. He probably never imagined that one day the meek and compliant Heather would look at him with such contempt. Come back with me. He took a deep breath, seemingly suppressing something. It is too chaotic here, not suitable for you. I can unfreeze your cards, you can continue painting, just not in a place like this. Not suitable for me. I laughed. Kevin, you are wrong. This is the most real world. There is greed here, there is desire, but there is also the vitality of lives struggling desperately to survive. I stayed too long in that greenhouse at Thorne Manor. I need this kind of chaos to wake me up. Also, I cut him off. Thanks for helping me out just now, but that doesn't mean I've forgiven you. Things between us ended a long time ago. With that, I pulled Max along and merged into the bustling crowd without looking back. This time, Kevin didn't follow. I glanced back once. He stood under the colorful neon lights, looking so lonely, so out of place. After leaving Las Vegas, we finally arrived at our journey's destination, Los Angeles. This is the city of angels and also the heart of the fame game. Max compiled all the paintings I'd done along the way and submitted them to the biggest modern art gallery in Los Angeles. Unexpectedly, just 3 days later, we received a reply from the curator. They were very interested in the series called Escape from Eden and invited me to participate in an upcoming emerging artist group exhibition. The exhibition opening was scheduled for a Friday evening. For this debut, Max specifically took me to a thrift store to find a vintage black slip dress. No expensive jewelry, no elaborate hair and makeup. I just stood there bare-faced in front of my paintings. The Escape from Eden series consists of 12 paintings, documenting my emotional journey from fleeing New York to arriving on the West Coast. The colors transition from the initial gloomy and oppressive tones, gradually shifting to intense reds, yellows, and blues, full of explosive power. Many media and critics came to the exhibition. I also saw that old gentleman who had bought my painting in Santa Fe. Turns out, he was a famous art collector. Just as I was being interviewed by reporters, a commotion suddenly broke out at the entrance. Camera flashes went off like crazy as Kevin walked in with that actress named Ivy on his arm. This time, his appearance was obviously premeditated. He wore a deep blue velvet suit, while Ivy wore a dress almost identical to the one I had worn that night in New York. This deliberate imitation sent a chill down my spine. The reporters immediately crowded around them. After all, a headline like Thorne family heir shows up at ex-fiancée's art exhibition was explosive enough. Mr. Thorne, how would you comment on Miss Heather's work? A reporter held the microphone up to Kevin's mouth. Kevin smiled and glanced at the paintings on the wall, his smile carrying a calculating look I wasn't familiar with. Heather has always been talented, he said to the camera, his tone gentle like a devoted ex. Although these art styles look somewhat familiar, everyone knows my former lover Selena Vance was also an excellent artist. Heather has been deeply influenced by Selena in many ways. One could even say she is imitating her. The whole room erupted. The word imitating is practically a death sentence in the art world. Kevin was implying that I was a soulless plagiarist, a stand-in living in Selena's shadow. Ivy also chimed in at just the right moment to twist the knife. Yeah, I also think these paintings look so much like Sister Selena's style, especially this light in the cracks. The composition is almost identical to Sister Selena's unfinished abyss from before she passed. The reporter's gazes instantly turned sharp, all turning toward me. Miss Heather, what is your response to this? Did your creative inspiration really come from Selena Vance? I stood under the spotlight, feeling my blood boiling throughout my body, not from fear but from anger. Kevin, just to strike me down, just to make me submit, was actually willing to publicly destroy my reputation. Was this his so-called love? If he couldn't have it, he'd destroy it. I took a deep breath and took the microphone from the host's hand. Imitation? I sneered, my gaze piercing as I stared at Kevin. Mr. Thorne, you seem to have forgotten something. Selena Vance was only 22 when she died, and most of her works were stuck on exploring pain and death. But my paintings depict life, freedom, and the wildness after breaking free from shackles. I pointed at that painting, light in the cracks. This painting was done at the summit of Angels Landing in Zion National Park. It is 1,700 meters above sea level, with sheer cliffs on both sides. My acrophobia kicked in at that moment, and I nearly fell off. It was my friend who pulled me back. At that moment, I saw the impression, sunrise, and felt the power of being alive. That is the source of my inspiration. I paused, took a step closer to Kevin, my voice ringing clear throughout the venue. As for the stylistic similarities you mentioned, perhaps it is because we were both trapped in the same cage for too long. The only difference is, Selena chose to sink, while I chose to escape, so please, don't lump me together with her. I am Heather Bennett, and every stroke of color I paint belongs to me alone. The moment I finished speaking, thunderous applause erupted throughout the venue. That old collector even led the applause, loudly exclaiming, "Well said." The most precious thing in art is authentic vitality. In these paintings, I see an independent soul, not someone's shadow. Kevin's expression instantly turned extremely ugly. He had originally wanted to humiliate me in public, but never expected to become a stepping stone for my rise to fame instead. Ivy wanted to say something more, but Kevin shot her a fierce glare that scared her into silence. "Let's go," Kevin said in a low voice, turning to leave this place where he had lost all face. "Wait," I called out to him. "Since you are here, why not buy a painting before you leave? After all, it is for charity." I pointed to a small painting in the corner titled, "Death of a Canary," depicting a bird dead in a golden cage, its feathers gorgeous yet stiff. "I think this painting would be particularly fitting for your study, Mr. Thorne." The whole room burst into laughter again. Kevin stared at me fixedly, emotions churning in his eyes, something like anger, or perhaps some kind of regret I didn't understand. In the end, he said nothing, his face ashen as he strode away. Watching his retreating figure, I knew I had won this round. Not just against Kevin, but I had won back the self I had abandoned for so many years. A month after the exhibition ended, my life underwent earth-shattering changes. The Escape from Eden series sold phenomenally. Not only did I pay off all my previous debts, but I also had a considerable amount in savings. More importantly, I had established myself firmly in the art world, no longer the Heather attached to the Thorne family name. But the emerging artist Heather Bennett, Max and I didn't stop there. We sold that RV Terried Memories. It was indeed old and rented a studio with large floor-to-ceiling windows on Malibu Beach. Here I can see the most beautiful sunset every day. Waves crash against the rocks. Seagulls circle in the sky. This peaceful and free life is something I never dared to dream of before. That afternoon, I was in my studio brainstorming a new piece when the doorbell rang. I opened the door, and standing outside was actually Kevin's personal assistant, holding a huge velvet gift box in his hands. "Miss Heather, this is from Mr. Thorne for you," the assistant said respectfully. I frowned. "I don't need it. Take it back." "Sir said this is not just a gift, but also a gesture of sincerity. Please do take a look," the assistant insisted. I hesitated for a moment but still opened the gift box. Inside was a wedding dress. It was a custom piece by Vera Wang, with thousands of small diamonds embedded on the skirt, so gorgeous it was breathtaking. But this wedding dress wasn't unfamiliar to me. This was the one Kevin had once promised to have custom made for me when I was still at the Thorne estate. Only back then, he said, when you stop being such a wild child, you'll be qualified to wear it. And now, this wedding dress that arrived 5 years late just lay quietly in the box, as if mocking the years gone by. Besides the wedding dress, there was also a document. I picked it up and saw it was a trust fund transfer agreement, as well as a marriage application. Kevin's name was already signed on it. Mr. Thorne says, as long as you sign, you can not only immediately become the legitimate Mrs. Thorne, but also receive 5% of Thorne Group's shares. This is his compensation for his previous behavior, and also his guarantee for your future, the assistant said. 5% of the shares. That is a fortune worth hundreds of millions for ordinary people. This is simply a temptation to skyrocket overnight. But I only felt it was absurd. Kevin still doesn't understand that what I want isn't money at all, nor that empty title of Mrs. Thorne. He thinks as long as he offers a high enough price, I'll definitely come back. This kind of arrogance is really ingrained in his bones. Where is he? I asked. Mr. Thorne is waiting for you in the car outside. I picked up the document and the wedding dress gift box and strode out. Kevin was indeed sitting in that black Bentley. Seeing me come out, he pushed the door open and got out, his eyes carrying a hint of expectation and even a trace of nervousness I had never seen before. Heather, he stepped forward. Do you like it? This is what you've always wanted. What I've always wanted. I looked at him and couldn't help but laugh out loud. Kevin, have you lost your memory? What I've always wanted was an equal partner, a warm home. But all you've given me is humiliation, control, and compensation that feels like charity. I slammed the gift box down hard on the hood of the car, making a dull thud, and this agreement. I waved the document in my hand, 5% of the shares. Are you trying to buy out my life? What do you think I am? A commodity you can just slap a price tag on. Kevin's expression shifted, but he still patiently explained, I know you are still angry. I was wrong that day at the exhibition. I shouldn't have said those things about you. But I was jealous. I was jealous that all those people got to see your talent while I kept you locked up at home. I know now that you really are gifted. Just come back and you can paint however you want. I can even sponsor you to open your own art gallery. See, even now you are still talking about sponsoring. I shook my head, the last trace of warmth disappearing from my eyes. Kevin, we're just not from the same world. Your love is possession, control, turning me into what you want me to be. The love I want is like Max's even if I wanted to jump off a cliff. She'd hold my hand and say, don't be afraid, I'll be right there with you. At the mention of Max, a shadow flickered in Kevin's eyes. That woman, what can she give you? Let you sleep in a parking lot. Let you busk on the streets, Heather. That kind of low-class life isn't for you. You were born to stand in the spotlight. Those were the happiest days of my life, I retorted loudly. Besides, I don't need your spotlight anymore. I can shine on my own. With that right in front of him, I tore that priceless share transfer agreement in half. Re-ape, the crisp tearing sound was particularly harsh in the sea breeze. Kevin stared wide-eyed in disbelief, as if looking at a madwoman. You are insane. This is hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't want it. I threw the scraps of paper into his arms. Take your money and your fake affection and get out of my sight. If you dare harass me again, I'll file for a restraining order. Don't force me to expose your shameful, controlling behavior to the public. I am sure the media would be very interested in the Thorne family's scandal. Kevin was completely frozen. He looked at the scraps of paper scattered all over the ground, then at my resolute face. Finally realizing that the girl who once only had eyes for him was truly never coming back. Heather, he murmured my name, his voice carrying an unprecedented panic. I really do love you. Too late. I turned and walked toward the studio, waving my hand with my back to him. Kevin, your love is too cheap. I can't afford it anymore. After that rejection of Kevin, my life completely returned to peace. Kevin never appeared again. I heard he fell seriously ill, and then was quickly arranged by his family to have a new marriage match. A true lady from a prestigious family, reportedly gentle in temperament, just like I used to be. When I heard this news, I was making final preparations for my solo art exhibition. Max asked me how I felt. I thought about it and said, it is like hearing some random stranger caught a cold. I don't feel anything. I truly feel nothing anymore. Whether it is love or hate, both require energy, and all the energy I have now, I need to save for my paintings, for my life. My solo exhibition, Wild Growth, opened at the Los Angeles Museum of Contemporary Art. This time, there was no interference from Kevin, only pure artistic exchange. That night, I also met an unexpected person, Selena Vance's sister, Emily. She walked up to me holding a bouquet of lysianthus, her expression complicated. My sister was actually in a lot of pain when she was alive. Kevin put her on a pedestal. She didn't dare make mistakes, didn't dare be ordinary. She once told me that what she envied most were wild horses that could run free. I think if she were still alive and saw your paintings, she would definitely be comforted. I took the flowers, and the last little knot in my heart came undone. So it turned out Selena was just another victim. We were both imprisoned by the same man in the name of love, except she paid with her life, while I barely escaped. After the exhibition ended, Max and I drove our newly bought convertible Jeep along California Highway 1. The sea breeze messed up my short hair, sunlight spilling on my face, warm and cozy. "Where to next?" Max asked. "No idea," I shouted with a laugh. "Wherever there is a road, that is where we go. The world is so big, I want to see it. Then let's go to Mexico. Eat the spiciest tacos, paint the wildest desert." The car raced down the highway with deafening rock music blasting from the speakers, looking at my wild, carefree smile in the rearview mirror. I suddenly thought of the girl who escaped from Thorn Manor on that rainy night. If I could travel through time, I'd want to hug her and tell her, "Don't be afraid, keep moving forward. There may be storms ahead, but there is also boundless radiance. I am no longer anyone's fiancé, no longer anyone's stand-in, not even just a painter anymore. I am Heather Bennett. I am a dandelion growing wild on the wasteland. As long as there is wind, I can fly anywhere I want to go. This is my ending, and also my beginning."